Bunny Trails, a whimsical adventure of idioms and other turns of phrase. I'm Dan Pugh.
And I'm Shauna Harrison. Each week, we take an idiom or other turn of phrase and try to tell the story from its entry into the English language to how it's used today. Welcome to Season 8 of Bunny Trails.
Woohoo! Boy,
Yay!
this has been, it seems like it has been not nearly as long as it actually has been, I think.
Yeah.
We started doing this, 8 years ago. 7 years ago, technically,
That's
I guess, because
just-
this is the start of Season 8. So, we are starting our 8th year. So we've been doing
That doesn't
this
sound right.
7 full years.
Wow.
Yeah, and we are starting our 8th year now, which, it's pretty cool. It's a lot of fun. Thanks to all of you who've been hanging out with us and making this possible.
Yeah, and if you've enjoyed the show, consider heading over to patreon.com/bunnytrailspod to show your appreciation.
Awesome. All right, Shauna, what are we doing this week? Let's get us going.
Okay. Some experiences make us look at our life in a whole new light. Something that might be a negative can give us perspective that changes everything. And it doesn't have to be something negative that can give us this feeling. In fact, even the smallest occurrence can give you a whole new lease on life.
I thought about this one time. I was driving and someone had run a stop sign, and I almost got hit by them. And it was a tiny thing, right? I mean, it would have been devastating had it happened, but it didn't happen. It was a near miss. I was pretty young. I think I was maybe 19. And so I just had to pull over and wait till my body calmed back down again. At the whole rest of the day, I had like this transcendental, I'm thinking about all kinds of different stuff. And I feel like just like, wow, I could have died there. Now I've got like this new lease on life, and no one else cared because they weren't there when it happened, right? They didn't experience that. And so they're like them, it's just Tuesday.
Right. And then you have this sense of like separation from everyone too. So then it just adds to that feeling. According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, new lease on life means, quote, a chance to continue living or to become successful or popular again, end quote.
Oh, interesting. I don't think I've paid attention to the usage of it becoming successful or popular again. Really just the concept of continuing to live, I guess, is really where I've thought of this phrase. But
right.
It does make sense if you've fallen on hard times, or, if you've been laid off and you're, struggling to get by, and then, you get that job finally and it's ready to go. I could see where the phrase would apply for sure.
Yeah. So the key word in the phrase is lease. Oxford English Dictionary tells us lease is, quote, figurative with reference to the permanence of occupation guaranteed by a lease, especially in a new lease of life, end quote. This is what makes the phrase as meaningful as it is that permanence that is implied by lease.
Interesting. I think of a lease as a temporary thing. Like that's like I've got a lease on a, you get a mortgage on a house, at least in the U.S. But if you're leasing, that means you're renting. That means it's not permanent. It's a temporary solution.
Fair. However, it is not you're not just staying for the night kind of thing. It's like you've been given a lease. You have that definite. You're able to occupy that space.
Okay, sure. So it's all right. I get that. I can see that. Yeah. Where it's the difference between, am I going to be here for the next 80 years? Well, only if you own the place and decide not to leave. But am I going to be here for the next year? Yes, I've got a new lease.
Right,
I'm here for the foreseeable
so it's like
future.
You've renewed your lease on it,
Sure,
kind of
okay.
Yeah.
Continuing life for the foreseeable future. All right, yeah, I like that.
This figurative usage of the word lease goes back to as early as the late 1500s. We find it in print in the collected works of Mary Sidney Herbert, Countess of Pembroke, published circa 1595. Quote, of my grant, they had enjoyed a lease of bliss with endless date, end quote. I thought that was kind of neat, a lease of bliss.
Yeah, that's, I have a year of bliss. I have 6 months of bliss. Actually, you know what? If I could sign a lease on bliss, I would do that totally. Yeah, absolutely.
I think a lot of people would. So those last two little snippets might have made you question, as they did me, how important are prepositions? A comparison between American and British usage shows that the phrase new lease on life is predominantly American, while new lease of life is more common in British English. Both versions, using on and using of, remain popular in English-speaking regions, so we're not going to be distinguishing between the two for the rest of the episode here. We can find the figurative concept of a lease applied to human life in print around the mid-1600s. For that, we will look to John Milton's An Epitaph on the Marchioness of Winchester, published in his 1645 collection, Poems. Quote, "That to give the world increase, shortened hast thy own life's lease." End quote. That was implying shortening the lease on lives in order to improve the world. So it was kind of still applying that figurative concept of lease to a person's life. By the end of that century, the full phrase made it into print. John Dryden used it in the piece called Of Pythagorean Philosophy in his 1700 work, Fables Ancient and Modern, translated into verse from Homer, Ovid, Bosacchi, and Chaucer, with original poems by Mr. Dryden. Quote, "An infant phoenix from the former springs, his father's heir, and from his tender wings, shakes off his parent dust, his method he pursues, and the same lease of life on the same terms renews." End quote.
Well done for the rhyminess. I like it. And it still rhymes to this day. That's very fancy. Nicely done, John Dryden.
I thought you'd like that one. The phrase has been used to indicate a revitalization of many things, not just human life. Here's one example from the January 1857 edition of the Cincinnati Medical Observer. It includes a list of medical journals along with commentary regarding each. Here is one. Quote, "The Southern Journal at Knoxville has come to life again. We are glad to see it on our table once more and trust its new lease on life will be vigorous and permanent." End quote. The next item comes from the Motion Picture News out of New York City, New York. We look to an article from January 20th, 1912. Quote, "Filming the White Plague. On the alert to secure film subjects most interesting and valuable to the human race, the up-to-date film manufacturers are pressing into service every phase and circumstance of modern institutions. The world's largest sanitarium for the treatment of tuberculosis is located in the Adirondacks and is known as the Ray Book Sanitarium. A New Lease on Life is a most appropriate title for a moving picture woven around the experience of a man who, by dissipation and failure to follow nature's laws, became the victim of that ravager of the white race, entered the Ray Brook Sanitarium, and by studiously following the rules laid down, he was given a new lease on life." End quote. I found this a fascinating piece from history, and there's a little bit more about it that we're going to discuss in our behind the scenes, which airs every Friday. It's available on Patreon at patreon.com/bunnytrailspod. Our next excerpt is from an ad in the May 22nd, 1902 edition of Life out of New York, New York. We see an image of a man playing golf and wearing traditional early 1900s golfing gear. The ad is from the Andrew Jergens Company. Quote, "Healthful exercise puts a man on good terms with himself, followed by a brisk bath he feels and looks as if he had a new lease on life. Woodbury's facial soap tones up the muscles, prevents soreness, gets at the pores, does away with impurities brought out by exercise, leaves skin smooth as a baby's cheek. Soothing, healing, delightful, it is essentially a skin soap." End quote.
Oh, that's interesting. I guess I didn't know that Jergens had been around that long.
Yeah, for those of you wondering if it is that Jergens, yes, it is. Here's a recent note from the company. Quote, "In 1901, our Jergens Classic Cherry Almond Lotion, known as Jergens Original Scent, became the best-selling hand lotion in America, which remains a favorite to this day." End quote.
Wow.
A long time.
Yeah, I just did a quick look, and so 1882 is when the Andrew Jergens Company was founded. I don't know when it became Jergens like we know it today, but that's really interesting.
Yeah. The late 1930s saw many people seeking to improve their lifestyles and dreaming of a life less troublesome. Unfortunate timing. I suppose this could be said for almost any time in history. Well, Life magazine, December 13th, 1937 edition, was filled with ways for the average American to achieve their hopes and dreams. One article was titled, Miami, A New Lease on Life. It begins, quote, Miami's latitude will brighten your attitude towards life. Because it's down in America's sun-swept tropics, yet Miami is within easy reach of everyone. That's why hundreds of families will again be in winter quarters here for now until spring. New lease on life. Longer stays mean lower average costs. All-season family budgets are much the same as at home. Don't dismiss this idea with a brief, oh, that's impossible. Investigate it thoroughly. It will mean new experiences, new thrills, a new lease on life. First aid in planning your Miami vacation. Miami's new official booklets, pictures, living costs, accommodations, sports programs, and it's yours for the asking. End quote. This article was an ad from the Chamber of Commerce in Miami. You just had to mail them the included coupon with your name and address to get a copy of the booklet. So I thought that was really interesting.
That's pretty neat. I also really appreciate Miami's latitude will brighten your attitude towards life. Like, that's just really good.
Very
We know
clever.
I'm a simple guy and I really like rhyming.
Before we move to more recent items, let's take a look at the 1963 novel by Belgian author Georges Simenon titled A New Lease of Life. Here's the synopsis from the publisher. Quote, Maurice Dudon is a bachelor, creature of habit, and a virtual recluse. An otherwise model employee, every Friday he withdraws funds from the boss's cash register for his furtive, ritualistic visit to Madame Germain, followed by the confession he makes with gloomy delight. One day, coming out of his weekly sin, Dudon is hit by a car. It is the punishment of fate, long awaited. He is seriously injured, and the person responsible for his accident pays for the best doctors in a luxury clinic. From the twilight of a slowly easing pain, he sees the comforting figure of his nurse, Anne-Marie. As their relationship moved from the purely professional to the highly intimate, Dudon feels like he has a new lease on life. But can he outgrow his old obsessions? End quote.
Oh my.
So this is not the type of work that most people who are familiar with Simenon would expect. The author published some 500 books, which is incredible. Many of these were detective stories, so there may be some unexpected twists and turns in this one. I don't know. It's a lot going on.
No kidding.
Well, we have several modern uses to cover, and we will get to those right after we say thank you to our sponsors.
This episode is sponsored by our amazing patrons on Patreon. And the cool thing about Patreon is it is 100% free to join the Bunny Trails community. We have new things every weekday on the feeds. On Mondays, we have a conversation about what movies, shows, books, podcasts, and whatever else everyone is enjoying. Tuesdays see early access to the week's podcast. Wednesdays have all the links, books, songs, and other content mentioned in the week's episode. Thursday has patrons-only polls. And Fridays are our lightly edited, behind-the-scenes video featuring all the cut content, goofs, and bonus facts you could imagine.
We've got some other pretty cool stuff too, like original digital artwork once a month made by me, and direct access to talk with us. No algorithms getting in the way of what we see or don't see. Plus, you can get awesome name recognition like Pat Rowe does every episode. And our top spot is currently occupied by the amazing Mary Halsig Lopez. You can join the Bunny Trails community for free at Bunny Trails Pod on Patreon.
That's patreon.com/bunnytrailspod.
A New Lease of Life by Joanna Hunter is an article published online by The Times, April 7th, 2003. Here is some of the piece. Quote, what do you do when your audience has disappeared? Not because people won't come to your cinema, but because they can't. This is what happened to the Lux. Due to financial problems, East London's best-loved art house closed its doors suddenly and apparently permanently, one bleak afternoon in October 2001. For the independent film world, it looked like time to put down the 16mm and sign up to Disney. And then, out of the ashes rose Lux, the company. Lux the Center may have gone, but its archives remained. Some 4,000 titles stretching back to the 1920s, largely inherited from the center's predecessors, London Filmmakers Co-op and London Electronic Arts. Lux Mark II, a nonprofit company, was formed mainly to give access to the archives. But the problem remained. thousands of films, but nowhere to show them. So instead of people coming to Lux, Lux took its films to the people, putting on works in smaller, independent spaces on a temporary basis, often alongside other projects. End quote. I thought that was really cool.
That is really neat. I didn't know that history of that facility. I've never been to London, so there's that. But I do have several podcasts I listen to that over the years that have been made by people who are in London and also people who are big film fans. So I'm surprised I'd not heard this mentioned before.
I mean, I've heard of the Lux, but I hadn't heard about its closing and this kind of change in how they were doing things. So it was really neat to read about it. The phrase was also used in an article published by the BBC News magazine in 2010. This one is titled, A New Lease on Life, was written by John Kelly. Here's a snippet that begins the article. Quote, "The golden age of home ownership is over," says a report by Distinguished Housing Organization. But could the British ever learn to love renting? End quote.
Woof. I think if home ownership is going to be allowed in this society, then having a big portion of your community that can't afford to buy homes is a failure of that society.
The group Mercy Me released the song New Lease on Life as a part of their 2014 album Welcome to the New. Here are some of those lyrics. Quote, "O Lord, remind me of who I am. My chains have been shattered. I'm a brand new man. I'm freed indeed. I'm dead no more. At my worst, I'm still adored. O Lord, remind me this is who I am. I've got a new lease on life. They say you only live once, but I live twice. I've got a new lease on life. I've got a new lease on life." End quote. On Wisconsin Online has an article in the arts section titled A Beloved Mosaic's New Lease on Life. It was originally published in their winter 2019 edition, and here's a little from the article. Quote, "As a mosaic in the busy William H. Sewell Social Sciences Building, man, creator of order and disorder, has been bumped by passersby since its installation in 1963. Last May, the UW brought in Milwaukee conservator Cricket Harbeck to restore the colorful work by James Watrous, creator of the Memorial Union's Paul Bunyan murals and other beloved campus art. Armed with a headlamp and brushes, Harbeck returned the piece to its former glory. She even replaced some of the glass tessera tiles with identical versions from Watrous's original supply. Miraculously, the tiles were still in campus storage, safely packed in Babic ice cream tubs." End quote.
I want to know who it is that was such a hoarder back in the day, and they may still work there, and then someone is going to come in and go, "John, you're not going to believe this, but do you happen to still have any of that old mosaic back from whatever, 63? And then he's going to be like, "I knew it. I knew you'd need this.
Right.
I've been saving it forever."
Okay, what I really have in my head is that it's, like the security guard or the night custodian, and there's this person, she's there working on this project, however, and she's just like, and then he comes by and goes, "Well, still got
Just
those original pieces."
Yeah, definitely be the custodian, and that's the one who would know that.
He comes in and saves the day,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love it.
Someone was a hoarder, and now they're going to use this forever as
Right.
the example
So,
of why it's okay to be a hoarder.
Did they know that they were in the ice cream tubs, or were they labeled?
I'm sure the custodian did. I mean, they know everything about a place. If you want to know what's going on in a building, talk to your facilities people and talk to your custodial staff. They know what's going on.
They do. This piece is a really cool layered wall mosaic. It features a human with one half created in golden pieces and the other half in red and what appear to be yellow flames emanating to that side from the center. The person is encircled by numerous geometric sections around and in front of the middle area of the piece to make an elliptical. It's difficult to describe, but it looks really cool. Andy Grammer's song Lease on Life is a single that was released in 2021. Here are some of the lyrics. Quote, "Like a sunrise on the longest night, like a rescue coming just in time. Yeah, you save me when I cannot see the light. Like a heartbeat to a lonely drum when I thought that the end had come. You remind me that it's only just begun. Took my soul down to the water. Mama, I came back a different man. Long as we got one another singing ooh, ooh, ooh. Everything's gonna be all right. Everything's gonna be all right. Got a brand new, got a brand new, got a brand new lease on life. End quote. That song has a really positive vibe. It's catchy. It's one of those like energizing songs. I actually added it to my house cleaning playlist because it's got that like pep. Hey, don't make eyes about the house cleaning.
I said nothing. I've just seen how you live.
Whatever. In the moment. Thanks. In a completely different style, Decapticon released the song A New Lease on Life on the album For Those Who Died in 2022. Quote, no, I don't believe what you say because I feel that this makes no sense to me. Why are you showing me things I don't want to see? And why are you telling me it's my fault, this misery? Hear my cry, I don't want to die. Hear my cry, I don't want to die. For a new lease of life, I offer you my sacrifice. You can lay down your strife and get a chance to survive. And as they took the knife was the point I realized that I haven't died and felt pain like I was alive. End quote. The full lyrics are really emotional. When I read them, I imagined the heart-crushing choice a parent would have to make of letting their child's organs give new life to another person. While I don't know the intended meaning, there are really strong themes: suffering, loss, struggle between life and death, and the recognition of sacrifice and its significance in some moments that are a new lease on life for others. Now, the song is heavy thrash metal style, so many wouldn't know how deep these lyrics are by listening to the song.
And I probably never will because I'm not going to listen to that. If they turn it into a poem, though, I might read it.
That's what I was thinking. If you're interested in the poetry of it, just read the lyrics. It's beautiful and gut-wrenching and beautiful. Hydraulic Prosthetics, A New Lease on Life, is a 2023 book by Mohammed Shahada. Here is part of the synopsis from the publisher. Quote, inside this groundbreaking book, you'll discover the evolution of prosthetics and the disruptive influence Hydrowheel's technology brings to the table. A deep dive into the mechanics of hydraulic prosthetics, decoding the science behind water-powered movement and superior user comfort. Ethical and sustainability considerations unique to the development and distribution of prosthetics, setting Hydrowheel's technology apart in the commitment to both human welfare and ecological responsibility, and much, much more. End quote. The website newleashonlife.org is the online presence for New Leash on Life USA. Their motto on the site reads, quote, restore lives, reduce recidivism, rescue dogs, end quote. Leash in this case is Leash. Here's their introduction. Quote, they rescued each other. New Leash on Life USA is a Pennsylvania 501c3 nonprofit that leverages the powerful bond between humans and dogs to restore hope, healing, and well-being to transform lives. With our innovative and unique program model, we rescue at-risk dogs and work with justice-involved individuals in both prison and community settings to create fresh starts. Our programs are based on animal-assisted therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, and trauma-informed practices. By providing tools and strategies for changing negative patterns and increased opportunities for meaningful employment, we help our participants succeed as responsible returning citizens. Our rescue dogs go through a training program with their justice-involved trainers and graduate into loving adoptive homes. End quote.
That's really sweet.
The website is cry-worthy. The photos, you know.
Okay. I don't think I'll be going there then. Thanks. It was great.
If you're a person who cries at commercials like I do, you know.
I don't cry at many commercials, but that Sarah McLachlan one, I know. I was just thinking that too.
That's the one.
Okay.
This one's a beautiful, positive, happy cry. The feeling of reinvigoration and a renewed excitement for life is incredible. I love this phrase because it does capture the significance of the experience, like the thrill of a new car or home. But in this case, it applies to everything you own and all of your relationships. That's about all we have for today. If you have any thoughts on the show or pop culture references we should have included, reach out to us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/bunnytrailspod, or comment on our website, bunnytrailspod.com.
It is patrons poll time. Recently, we asked our patrons, would you rather live for a year on the moon or in the deep ocean? While a good number of our patrons would love to visit the creatures of the deep, the preferred vacation destination with 60% of the votes is the moon. For me, as cool as the deep ocean sounds, and it is probably far more realistic of the two, it would be really cool to be in space to get to go to the moon. Although I gotta be honest with you, I don't want to do either of them for a whole year. I would do either of them for like a 2-week visit or maybe even a month. But
Like a
I,
vacation.
yeah, I just and here's the thing: I've been, there are astronauts that have gotten stuck up in space for like, months and months after their time, and I'm just like, nope, no, thank you. So,
Yeah.
as I would still choose the moon, but I think logistically, if it came down to it, I'd probably choose the ocean just because I don't want to deal with all of those logistics. I just don't trust the system to get me home again.
I think they both are sounding scary to me now. Like, you're stuck underwater, you're stuck in outer space. Heather said, quote, "When I was young, I thought we'd have moon bases by now. Give me the moon, Mars, orbital satellites, anything but the ocean," end quote. I think I'd ask to do both. I want to see all those like magical deep sea creatures, but I've wanted to go to space since I was a kid. Like Heather said, I also really thought that we'd have moon bases by the time I grew up, and I'm a little disappointed, people.
It's all right. We probably would have if it weren't for JFK.
Oh, well, that's sad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, no, it was no. It's not his death that caused it. It was his statement that we're going to put a person on the moon by the end of the decade.
And then we
so,
did.
Yeah, well, we did, but we had to do that at the cost of not building. The original plan was to send things to outer space and build the stuff there.
Right.
And if had we done that, we would have been in. We would have probably been. We probably would have a moon base already.
Right.
But that just did not happen.
Because the moon race or moon colonization.
More important for us to get to the moon than it was to be able to go to the moon long term.
Right. Yeah. And there are limited funds for certain things in the world.
True.
And space travel is really expensive.
Citation needed. All right. Jan adds, quote, "Well, those don't sound appealing. I picked the moon. At least you'd see sunlight. Can see your house from there if you squint. And I suppose it would be pretty cool to say you spent time on the moon." End quote. That's fair, Jan.
Jan
fair,
always
fair
has
assessment.
really good answers. Like, they're just solid,
Yeah. Well, as a reminder, our silly polls mean absolutely nothing and are not scientifically valid. And patrons of all levels, including our free tiers, can take part. Head over to patreon.com/bunnytrailspod to take this week's poll. Thanks for joining us. We will talk to you again next week. Until then, remember, words belong to their users.